Welcome to the Beyond Thundera Podcast. I am Sean Buddha McEwen, author of the Hall of Omens and the Hall of Omens Thunderverse, and I'm alongside ThunderCats, the SilverHawks, writer, showrunner, all-around great guy who actually also worked on many other shows, as we're going to be seeing. We're going to talk about some of them today. Peter Lawrence.
Hi.
Hey, Peter, again, thank you for always being here. And as I was just getting to, this is called Beyond Thundera. It's going to be the first time. Well, on some other episodes, we've talked about, other shows people have worked on. We haven't really talked much about other shows, or we haven't gone into depth about other shows that you have worked on. And
Right.
you have quite a career as far as in animation, even outside animation. But on this episode right now, we were kind of figuring we touch on some animation that outside of the Rankin Bass world that you worked on. And one of the ones I know I would like to talk about, our editor Lee was a huge fan of this series. And I will say, I do apologize. I not that I wasn't a fan of it, I did not watch it like I did ThunderCats or other cartoons. So this will be great for me kind of learning a bit more about it. But you worked on Peter Pan and the Pirate Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates.
I did, yeah. Um, I got into it in a very odd way. I had finished with Rankin Bass. Excuse me. And I had thought, really, well, that's the end of animation for me, because as we've discussed before, I never really thought that I was going to be the animation would play a big part in my life, in my professional life. And so when Rankin Bass all finished, and I was in New York, living in New York, and there was no work in New York, at least I don't think there was. So certainly I never found any. And I thought, okay, and I've always been very involved in independent films and in raising the money for them. And actually, there are a couple of very funny stories about that. But out of the blue, Lee Dannacher called me and said, come over to LA because I'm working on Peter Pan and the Pirates, and we need a story editor.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know Lee was involved with Peter Pan and the Pirates.
Yeah, I know she was. Yeah, so I went over and I met Buzz Potamkin, who I then also worked with later on Johnny Quest. And I didn't know Buzz, and I should have looked this up, but and I apologize. He had one very successful show, among others, which enabled him to finance a company, which I think he called Buzzco.
Okay.
And he bought the rights to Peter Pan on some very slim pretext. And I tried to look that up, and I don't remember, and there's nobody left who can tell me.
Okay, so again, you may not know, but I kind of thought that Peter Pan by that time was it the domain, because I forget the terminology.
Public domain.
Public domain. I thought maybe by that time it was kind of open. I know there's this Disney stuff we could possibly get into, but so what was it public domain by that point?
Well, I think that was the argument, that it was public domain, but other people had either, I'm not sure of the legalities, but there definitely was a problem. And that's one reason why it was called Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates.
Okay.
Because they could register that, and that could be the IP and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So anyway, I got over there. I didn't know anything about it. I mean, obviously I knew the story of Peter Pan. And by the way, well, yeah, no, I keep starting things and thinking, no, you shouldn't say that. Keep your mouth shut. But one of the nicknames that I had was Peter and Pat. I worked at a lot of things that nobody, even, the age of, as I was then, 30 or 40 or whatever it was, should have done. Okay. Having really insane things like, flying a helicopter to Venezuela, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so Peter Pan shows up in LA, and I got to tell you, it's a sidetrack, but it just shows, what friendship does. I had a friend in New York who I met because we were trying to raise money for independent features. Really very cool guy called Andy Leonard, who's got an amazing story. And maybe we should get him on this show, even though he's nothing to do with animation. And Andy and I became very good friends. And then he went to LA and he picked me up from the airport. This first trip, well, not the first trip I'd made to LA, but it was, this for this job.
Mhm.
Took me to his house where I was going to stay a few days until we found out what happened. Took me into the garage, and he had built an entire office in the garage
Oh, right.
for me,
Oh, wow. It's like, oh, wow. That's awesome.
just for me. Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely the greatest guy. Anyway, it still is. Anyway, so off I went to the office, and I met Buzz and Lee, obviously, and that's when I met Takashi,
Okay.
who became my great friend and kind of brother from another planet. Because nobody could understand Takashi. Nobody understood. I mean, he spoke perfectly good English,
Mhm.
but he was in another world of metaphysics, physics, I, Buddhism. I mean, it was so obscure. And for
Okay.
some reason, we connected.
Huh.
So at that point, as so often in my career, they said, "Well, we'll give you a couple of weeks, contract or a month, whatever it was, and see how it goes." Okay, fine. So I go in the office. I find out there are like 5 other story editors.
Like all going for the same job, or that was just five?
No,
Like,
no, no, they're employed. They're working
oh,
on the show. And by the way, the reason that they called me was that they had problems with the scripts.
okay.
So I go there. There are 5 other people working on it, and God knows how many writers they called in. And I said to Buzz, I look, I don't mean to be an arrogant prick, but if you want me to run the show, I have to run the show.
Right.
Or I'll write a couple of scripts for you.
Mhm.
But and it's the same thing that we've discussed about Thundercats and SilverHawks and even the comic strip. I don't. If somebody gives you that responsibility, it's that part of the show is your show,
Right.
and if you give that up, then it seems to me, and I could be completely wrong because I know lots of shows have multiple script responsibility, whatever they're called. Um, I mean, shows with one showrunner often have a lot of other people involved in the scripts, not just the writing. But I don't know. It seems to me the show's got to have some vision.
Mhm.
You can collect that vision from a whole bunch of people, but once you've got that vision, yeah, I think it's hard for a committee to maintain it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and in this particular case, and going back to Thundercats, one of the things is that the vision, thank you, Len, was so it was founded in a very in a quite narrow on a quite narrow foundation, but
Mhm.
that foundation enabled the building to go. You could extend it, and that's thanks to Len, really, and
Right.
the other writers who did extend it. So with Peter Pan, um, well, we're going to focus on the pirates and Hook, or more than the book.
Mhm.
And then I met Sid Iwanter, the famous, infamous, popular, unpopular intellectual, non-intellectual, um, angry, calm. I mean, a very, very interesting guy.
Mhm.
The thing about Sid is that, first of all, nothing stopped him saying what he thought. Nothing, nothing. And he made a lot of enemies for that because some of what he said was nothing to do with the show. Just random other stuff. The other thing was that he, to this day, remains the most knowledgeable person I ever met about children's literature.
Really?
And by the way, not just kids' literature, but children's literature. I mean, Beowulf, God knows what else. He had references that I had no idea. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So anyway, I met him, and one of the reasons that they had, I believe, and I need to just say this here to everybody. This was a long time ago, and it doesn't, I have a pretty good memory, but I'm sure there are other opinions.
Right.
And I'm sure there are other interpretations. Unfortunately, I can't check them because everybody involved, Buzz, Lee, is dead. Takashi, they're gone, So I can't call and say, hey, do you remember this? Am I right about that? I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason that they had so much trouble with the writing was that Sid had a very critical, and I don't mean negative, I mean a very critical analysis of what he and Margaret Loesch, who was running Fox Kids, very wonderful woman, very smart, fun, considerable charisma, and I think not really very well treated by the business. Because of course she was a nice person. A lot of nice people get crushed.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so eventually, I went to Buzz and I said, "Look, I can't do this unless you give me the show.
Mhm.
I can't do it." And so that's what happened. Um, I don't know how they, I don't know how they got rid of the others, but they did. And I don't think I could be wrong about this. I don't think any of them ever wrote for the show.
Oh really?
So I'm sure I was really unpopular. But that never really bothered me too much. So we started to have writers' meetings. And some of the ideas that people came up with were so absurd. We're going to have, Peter Pan and he's going to play rugby against the pirates. So you're talking about a cast of 30 people then, if you're going to do it properly.
Okay, right.
Or I suppose you could choose sevens. Nobody in America knows anything about rugby.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. And secondly, why? And do you know what rugby is? You realize that rugby, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying this would be for Peter Pan, but rugby basically, which I played for God knows how many years, is basically a bunch of thugs hitting each other and throwing the ball around, which they're only allowed to throw backwards. That's rugby. That is rugby. In fact, it's defined, in England, of course, they say soccer is a game played by hooligans. Oh, no, soccer is a gentleman's game played by hooligans. Rugby is a hooligan's game played by gentlemen.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
I mean, because I'm sorry, that's a side.
Oh no. But I will say, as far as I could see the pirates playing that game amongst themselves for Peter Pan and the Pirates. If they're
amongst themselves, perhaps.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Actually, not a bad idea, especially if Hook was playing because he's got the hook. But anyway, lots of really idiotic ideas, and I think against memory. I think there was a resentment that this guy came in from New York, never mind from England,
Mhm.
who'd worked in Rankin, wasn't Hollywood, wasn't LA, and even his film work is all independent.
Mhm.
And the only non-independent movie that we know anything about is a horror film, which is The Burning.
Yeah, it was a very
Uh,
big one, by the way. But we'll talk about that another time. But yeah,
yeah. So I think there was, a certain amount of resentment.
well, and yeah, you have mentioned too, on previous episodes, kind of like that where with Rankin Bass being based in New York too, it was almost that animosity amongst West Coast and East Coast in the animation world, which is almost it's silly to think about now, but so yeah, that continued to almost carry over because you were the New York guy coming into LA and getting
I mean, I think so, Buddha. I mean, I'm not a paranoid person at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and nor do I care.
Mhm.
But my impression is definitely that there was, uh, and what's it, animosity, maybe? Oh, will put it this way: there wasn't much respect. Oh,
Okay.
and I'm not talking about for me. You have to earn respect. You can't ask for respect.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think anybody actually respected the fact that we created two extremely unusual and very successful shows,
Mhm.
um, and run them through a, if not unique, very unusual system.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be some respect for
Yeah. Right. Right.
that.
But
And
that yeah, I was gonna say that shows you how Hollywood was, and maybe it's a lesser extent now, but still there is that mentality. As far as I think, I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know because I still, all the work that I've got, and I've got a couple of big projects out in Los Angeles, is more independent than
yeah,
that industry. Uh,
yeah,
Either an idea, in its sort of creative content, or in the way that we're trying to put it together. So I honestly don't know, but all I can tell you is
yeah.
that I think I felt there was some resistance. I didn't feel that from Margaret, and I didn't feel that from Sid.
Hmm.
Um, and we looked at the show, and I had still had I've done a lot of sailing, and I love the sea, and I love the history that's all involved, particularly the Nelson's Navy. And I had read every Patrick O'Brien book inside out, every C.S. Forrester. Do I mean C.S. Forrester? I think so. Inside out, and I, be rather vain about it or arrogant. I knew everything about Nelson's Navy, how that worked, everything, and quite a lot of the slang.
Okay.
And I picked up, unfortunately, I've only got one thing left, which is this, which says sea slang, the dictionary of old time expressions, blah, blah, blah. But I had a dictionary like this fat.
Oh,
And in fact, I think they're still in New Orleans. I'm not sure. Anyway, so we developed this whole language for Hook. I mean, it's obviously it's comprehensible,
mhm.
but it's language based on old sea slang and archaic English and this, that, and the other. So the show became much more centered around Hook and the pirates than it might otherwise have been.
Okay.
And Tim Curry
Yeah.
became Hook. I actually think he won an Emmy for it. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I know we were going to talk about this. I actually do want to talk about Tim Curry doing that, but yeah, he won a daytime Emmy for his performance as Hook, which is
I think he did. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now, there's a very funny story about that. Well, I don't know whether it's funny, but to me, it typifies, absolutely typifies writers and Hollywood. I'm going to say here and now, I invented that language
Okay.
because I had the knowledge.
Yeah.
All the writers, we had really good writers. All the writers picked it up and modified it and developed it.
Mhm.
Matthew was great with it, by the way. I mean, Matthew would come up with words like, what the hell does that mean? And, Anyway, the
And
guys
just like
who wrote,
Matthew Malik, right? Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Matthew Mallon,
yep, yep,
yeah. Matthew was on the show, yeah.
yeah.
Um, and we'll come to that. We might have to talk about Age of Japan, which he wrote.
Yeah.
The guys that wrote the script that somehow became associated with that Emmy, then basically, well, oh yeah, we won the Emmy. We won it. Come no acknowledgement that anybody else's part in it, you know.
Oh, great.
And I mean, in fairness, one of the two became a very good friend and was a very good friend. Um, so anyway, Tim Curry developed, you know, much as like Larry and Co did in ThunderCats,
Yeah.
developed this wonderful, wonderful persona for Hook,
Mhm.
and so the show, you know, really revolved around that whole dynamic much more than it does in the book, and much more, yeah, much more than it does in the book. And I think we had to produce 52 episodes. I think it was 52.
I
And
think when I looked up, I think it ran a total of, was it 65 total? I think was
of
it, is
this
that,
time,
yeah, I believe so.
really?
I believe well, now again, this
Okay.
is going by information on the internet, which is clearly always right. So I mean, you would know better than what the things say on on the internet, but that's what the things say there. I think it was six. They were saying 65 because I thought that was interesting based on the similarity between that and the like Thundercats things. It was like, oh wow, that was a lot of episodes for like the one season of it. I was very surprised for that.
I don't, well, I mean, okay, so that could be right, but it could well be right. So anyway, we had, obviously, you have to clear the stories
Yeah,
with the network,
yeah.
which, by the way, I never had to do on ThunderCats. I never had to do on SilverHawks. I never had to do anywhere before. It was like, you know, this is what we're going to do. And okay, fine. You know,
Right.
I had the first few, obviously, obviously with Jules, because he was so involved in the creation of all the shows.
Mhm.
With Lee, yeah, because she ran them as a producer and out of courtesy too. Well,
Mhm.
Thundercats, of course, she was also the kind of policeman of the show. So anyway, so with some trepidation, like I got to deal with Sid, and I don't think I'd met Margaret by then. So anyway, I had 15 stories or 20 stories, whatever they were, and you know, in came Sid and Margaret into the studio, sat down in the conference room. And I said, okay, the first story is that. The second one, and okay, yeah, that sounds okay. The second one, yeah, oh, yeah, no. Third one, 15 stories on the just like that, on the bar,
Wow.
just like that. Barely a comment.
Now, is that good or bad? Well, good, I would imagine, because they were
Well,
like,
it's fantastic. I mean,
yeah,
it's unheard of.
yeah.
I look, somebody can call in and say you're full of shit. You know what you're talking about. I have never ever worked on a show or heard of a show where. So that was the first session. If you're right about 65,
Mhm.
maybe there were 4 meetings. My memories are only 3,
Okay.
and we cleared every single idea we pitched
Oh wow.
without any rejections, without having to you know, lever anybody or corkscrew them.
Mhm.
Sid and Margaret were fantastic. And I did not realize at that point, because I had never worked with a network, believe it
Mm.
or not, I did not realize A, how unusual that was, B, how nice they were. Because very often, you know, it seems to be part of the executive's qualification to be an asshole, and basically to make you feel like shit,
No, really.
which a lot of people, you know, I mean, we've talked about writers before,
Mhm.
and I'm not a great fan of writers because I think as a tribe, you know, they're very insecure and they whine a lot. You know, really, I mean, if you don't, go and dig holes in the road and see how hard that is.
Right. Right.
Um, I'll tell you, come to, Buddha, you have to stop me if I'm getting off track.
Oh no, it's all
You
right.
have, you have to be the audience that's listening to this and say, hey, none of them are interested in that. Get back, So anyway, going back to executives, a lot of executives, I don't know whether it's insecurity or whether it's envy that they're not the writer or the director or the whatever the hell they want to be. They're just nasty people. Or maybe they're wonderful people at home. But when they get into the office, they put on the nasty jacket.
Right.
And the same with, a lot of, I mean, I remember going to a meeting, CIA, when CIA was in its prime agency, with two producers who had 3 or 4 very successful movies and to pitch a new idea. And the agent greeted them, hey, Buddha, how are you? Hey, man, how are you? How's it going? This, that, and the other. And he said, is this the writer? And I headed for the door.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I got pulled back in, but I headed for the door. So, you have that kind of dynamic, which is, I'm not saying it's universal, but it's very common.
Mhm.
And a bit of a digression, but a lot of the notes that you get from those executives are they're sort of valid, but not. I mean, okay, the answer is yeah, we could go that way. We could do that. Explain to me why it's better than this way that's being pitched to you.
Mhm.
And sometimes they can and do, and you change.
Mhm.
But it also means you got to respect them,
Right. Right.
you know. And I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure that Sid and Margaret, when they read the first drafts, I'm sure they had notes. I don't, but it's an indication of how good those notes must have been that I don't remember any fight at all.
Wow.
I don't ever remember saying or thinking, well, okay, yeah, okay, we could change that character to, I don't know, whoever you want. I don't even remember the names of the parts. Anyway, um, yeah, well, yeah, we could change that, but why?
Mhm.
And so a lot of the notes you get are personal. It's just I want to change that because I like it differently. Maybe it's an exercise of my ego. And
Right.
by the way, I'm being paid by the studio to do this.
Okay. Right.
Whereas the writer usually is only freelance, even on staff, is pretty insecure.
Mhm.
So you have an imbalance of power anyway.
Right.
And if you're a writer who has any spine, and a lot of them do, a lot of us, or a lot of them, a lot of them do, you get in an argument, and that creates a kind of adversarial continuum, if you like.
Mhm.
And so the next time you you say, well, is it worth arguing about this? I mean,
Right.
yeah, okay, Buddha could say it instead of Charlie or this or the other. All right, I'll change you. Instead of actually saying, wait a minute, this is my,
Mhm.
because it doesn't always matter, but if it does matter, this is my vision of it, and I'm writing it. So, have some respect for that before
Right.
you start buggering around with it.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Um, and I told you the golden bullet rule that Tony Malan, yeah, I mean, that was invaluable to me
Mhm.
because every time, and this didn't happen on Peter Pan, so another digression. Every time, I faced that kind of problem, um, I used to say, okay, Tony Man, golden bullet, is it worth it? Nah, that's not worth it. I'll change it.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
what happens over time is that the whole idea gets diluted.
Mhm.
And then quite often, you get to a point where the producers or the executive or whoever it is, even the director, has lost faith in you.
Okay, right.
Either because you haven't stood up or because you have stood up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I know that's a contradiction, but that
Oh
way.
yeah, yes, you're a
We put,
pushover or you're a problem. Like,
yeah, right. So we'll get another writer in.
yeah, right.
I would not, okay, and then they pay you off.
Mhm.
I've made more money being paid off work than I've ever made from work that I made. And that's absolutely true.
Really?
I've made way more money out of developing shows, pitching them, editing, uh, writing the first, second, or third draft, and then being fired. Um, and the first, well, let's go back to Peter Pan. Sorry. So, um,
We'll definitely talk about that another time. Because yeah, we'll have an episode of all the shows you've been fired from. That'll be fun. Like,
actually, that goes back to what I said about Harv Zimmel. We should get a couple of people on who've worked a lot in Hollywood and a lot, and tell those stories, because it's not just people complaining bitterly. It's actually why movies are the way they are.
yeah, right, right.
It's why it's easier to have somebody say, let's remake
Hmm.
this one or that one. I mean, I bet you anything you like, To Kill a Mockingbird will be remade.
Can you imagine what that would be like nowadays? I mean, yeah, that's a conversation for another time too. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, they're remaking the X Files,
yeah, yeah.
which really. Well, apparently Gillian Anderson has read the script, and I don't know whether she's involved. And she said that it's a very interesting take, and it's going to be wonderful.
Mhm.
So maybe it is.
Yeah, I
Maybe it
mean,
is.
if she's signing off on it, or maybe she's getting paid to be a producer on it, whatever it is. I mean,
But the other part of that equation
yeah,
is maybe it is, but
yeah,
maybe a new show would be even better.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
So all these, why are all the whole kind of Scandi noir school, Norwegian, Swedish, that people love. I mean,
Mhm.
absolutely adore. The way that the producers, the broadcasters go about that is they say, we need to do a police show. And a lot of them are procedurals. And no, my God, not another one. But, they say, we need to do a show, blah, blah, blah. And they bring in the 5 best writers that they know.
Mhm.
They shut them in a room and say, do it.
Right.
That's really a different approach to the way we do it here.
Mhm.
And that's the approach I think we took accidentally with ThunderCats, with SilverHawks, comic strip, and with Peter Pan.
Oh, really?
We got together, a couple of writing teams that we knew. Um, we knew that Matthews, really had interesting ideas,
Mhm.
and we had Sid and Margaret behind us. And so it was much more like a closed unit.
Okay.
And we cleared those 50 odd, 65, if you say,
Yeah,
still
whatever it is. Yeah.
matter, and we just wrote
Okay.
them. And this is also kind of unheard of, I think, because we had there was a broadcast standards committee that had to approve everything. Now you're writing a show where the main characters are pirates.
Right.
What do pirates do?
Yeah, nothing appropriate for a children's show. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, pirates college and they go yo ho ho, and there you go.
yeah.
So we had but by the way, the dynamic of Peter Pan and the pirates is that Peter Pan and Hook are mortal enemies,
Mhm.
uh, worse than Lionel and Munro, because Lionel and Munro have, whether you like it or not, a kind of semi-comic
Yeah.
uh, dynamic. There wasn't really any kind of, there's no real comic dynamic between Hook and Peter Pan.
Yeah.
So At least I don't think there is. I mean, I may be often out of space with all this, and somebody will write in and tell me I am, and that's fine.
Mm.
In fact, I'd start an interesting conversation, which reminds me, anybody listening, write your questions, tell us we're full of it,
Yeah.
disagree,
Mm.
ask for other information. I mean, this is supposed to be a conversation. I mean,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a monologue because it's Buddha and me, and obviously I worked on the show. But
Yeah.
So we wrote the 65 scripts, and one of them, I don't know if you remember Peter Pan, but they have the Neverbird. The Neverbird was a big kind of a big character in the show, and I thought, okay, let's do the Ancient Mariner with the Neverbird.
Okay.
You know the story of the Ancient Mariner. I'm sure you know, but just in case anybody doesn't, is that
Let's pretend I don't and explain it to everybody.
yeah, okay. Well, I mean, basically, there's a ship out there, and one of the crew kills an albatross.
Okay.
And I don't, the expression "an albatross around your neck"
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
from this whole story. And the boat, the ancient mariner, the boat becomes haunted, and everybody, as far as I remember, everybody dies, because this guy killed
Okay.
albatross. So the first draft of the script, one of the pirates killed an Neverbird. And it came back and said, well, actually, we can't kill the Neverbird. I mean, this was internal because that's like killing Captain Hook. You can't do that. So, okay. So I can't remember the stages the story went through, but they capture the Neverbird. No, that's not going to work. Yeah. So broadcast standards said, no, you can't do that. Why not? Well, because kids will go out and try and catch birds.
Okay.
Okay, well, so what? First of all, any bird that's incompetent enough to be caught by a kid, be a Darwin. Can anybody say Darwin? Because people don't really much like comments like that, So
Right.
even if you deliver them with a laugh. So anyway, we're through all these stages. No, you can't do that with a bird. No, you can't do that. So I had one of the pirates throw a belaying pin at the bird, and hits the bird on the head and knocks it out. No, you can't do that. Your kids will throw. Where is he going to get out of a belaying pin? Well, okay, they can throw a stone. So I said, all right, here's what happens. One of the pirates throws the belaying pin at one of the other pirates, and it bounces off his head, and it hits the Neverbird. So it's an accident.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that.
Okay.
So that was the only script, and eventually I gave up. It was a great script. I don't remember who wrote it actually, but it was a great story. The ship's haunted, and I think Pan in the end saved the day because he and Hook have this sort of symbiotic relationship, and if one disappears, the other disappears basically.
Right.
So that was the one script in 65 that we threw up. One.
That's why
Every other one got produced. Every single one.
Well, again, obviously, I'm learning from like it seems like that really is an unheard of type of arrangement.
Yes, I think very unusual. Again, but I don't have enough contact with people who wrote shows like He-Man or Batman or by the way, which I was rejected for roundly by another Los Angeles story editor, and I really have no idea why. But anyway,
for the Batman series, really,
yeah. So, but on the other hand, I don't, but anyway, I was
again. That other episode.
I didn't write that. So, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah. I will say so. Again, I was kind of doing like I said before, knowing we were going to do this, I started doing a little bit of, looking up to Peter Pan and the Pirates and seeing what other fans were talking about. And I know, like, you were absolutely right. There's definitely a fan base that absolutely loved that show. And one of the things that they even kind of talked about, which is kind of similar to ThunderCats, where even the dialogue and how the characters talk to each other and everything. This is something you had talked about before. But while it was a kids show, it wasn't like the dialogue wasn't like for children. Like it was written for, like, even older kids could watch it and enjoy it. It was like, as looking at the comments from people and all that, they also really appreciated that aspect of it, which was cool to see. Again, here, this excuse me, was that 5 years even after Thundercats, SilverHawks, and all that. That idea of not like, I forget how you worded it, and I apologize, and you can correct me. Right, like, what you weren't right, you were writing for kids, but you weren't writing. Was it two kids, or you kind of? I didn't. That's not a word. Like the language and like the interactions of everyone was, again, you were so kids could understand it on a, you know. Again, I'm wording this horribly, but do you understand what I'm saying with it as far as?
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
no. I mean, look, I so much of life is accidental, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. And I wish I could claim credit for all the good things
Hmm.
um, that may have occurred under any
Yeah.
of the shows that I work on, but I can't. I can't because a lot of other people are involved.
Right.
B,
Right.
a huge amount of luck.
Yeah.
But it just happens, and maybe this is going way too deep, but we had need to talk to Cusits into the psychology of everything. But I was an only child.
Hmm.
I grew up often with my parents apart.
Hmm.
In My father was a huge reader, and he read adult books with me. I don't mean adult in the
Yeah.
cards,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but books that weren't written for kids,
Right.
or books like Thurber, James Thurber, that were written in such a way, whether it's deliberate or not, I don't know, that both kids and adults could enjoy them.
Hmm.
And I love reading with my father.
Yeah.
So going on from there, went to boarding schools and blah blah blah. I'm not sentimental about children,
Right. Right.
and actually, I mean, particularly living in Colombia, where everybody's all the time about I said, what? Are you the first person that ever had a child? So that combination, and then so that's all sort of background and
Yeah.
who cares too much upbringing and this that, and the other. But then the semi-intellectual part comes in, where I think kids. I mean, look at them. They are grotesquely underestimated in
Hmm.
intelligence.
Yeah.
The thing about humans in general is if you treat them like idiots, they'll behave like idiots.
Yeah. Right. Right.
If you treat them with some respect and expectation, they usually rise up to it.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's the same with animals too. If you treat an animal,
Yeah.
you know, exactly. It's the I think the nature of nature, I suppose. I don't know. So, and as we said before, Roald Dahl, one of the most successful kids writers of all time, regardless of his rather dubious personal behavior.
Mhm.
Uh, that's putting it mildly. Roland, you should be grateful. Um, he always said writing for kids is exactly the same as writing for adults, but more difficult.
Mhm.
And so when we came up with whether it was going back to Thundercats or Silverhawks, we very rarely looked at dialogue and said, "Oh, that's a bit heavy for kids,"
Yeah.
because if it if it's a little complicated, all you have to do is explain it.
Right. Right.
Um, and we talked earlier, had a laugh about the fact that what I'm writing now in the whole Thundercats area has this kind of metaphysical
Yeah.
element to it, where it's
Mhm.
but it's real, but it's also bollocks.
Right.
But you can make it understandable if you
Yeah.
just do it coherently. Um, which is all a long way around of saying that, yeah, we wrote Peter Pan had its own language and it was very sophisticated. But I don't think that ever stopped anybody watching it because even if you had a kid who didn't, wasn't bright enough or wasn't engaged enough or whatever to deal with the dialogue, you had the action.
Yeah, right.
And to me, that's the trick. You can write for an 8-year-old, but if you've got action that appeals down market, as it were, that
Mhm.
works.
Mhm.
And right for a 15-year-old, I mean, Johnny Quest is a guy which we'll talk about eventually, is a very sophisticated the first few episodes until are actually pretty sophisticated.
Mhm.
But I don't think anybody looked at this, oh, I don't understand that, and turned it off. I don't think they do that.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, if I have any pride about anything that I did, and we look at kids shows, I mean, I'm really happy that they didn't talk down
Yeah.
and that they didn't treat children as idiots, and that they had some respect for the
Oh,
audience. You know,
yeah, 100%. I know one of the things I saw this, man, it's kind of a lot of people that talk about this particular. I'm going to paraphrase, and I apologize. I'm not getting
no,
the
yeah,
the exact wording right. Again, please in the comments let me know how I'm butchering all this. But there was an interaction between Hook and Peter Pan, and everyone still talks about it. It's and now again for this was a Fox Kids show, it was a pillar of the Fox Kids show, but like literally Hook's talking about, he's like, I've lived a full life. I was a child. Had fun, whatever it is. I grew up. I got to I got to be an adult. I got to grow old. I have all these experiences. And Peter, you're never going to understand any of that because you're forever a child. He's like, and then he's just like, go ahead, kill me. I've lived a full life, which when for a kid, you're not thinking on that level, but like it stood out to so many people still, and even now, when you look at it that way, it's like, holy crap, yeah, Hook has a point. He lived a very full life, and it's just like again, it was very at least older kid adult like written that they could understand. I just thought that was very cool because I know again, unfortunately, I did not like I did not watch Peter Pan and the Pirates like that when I was a kid, and now learning some of this stuff, I wish I would have because the seeing like the passion that people do have for it and seeing the writing and that type of stuff, it really does seem like it was a really significant show, which also shows where, from what I was reading, that was really helped launch the Fox Kids network. Like it was something, it was really one of the things that Fox got behind. This was going to be their thing. And then, it was only was it the one season or whatever it was, but it ran in like in reruns for about 6 or 7 years after the fact. So that shows you how much it held up amongst the audience it was aiming for, which is also surprising that, whatever, I'm sure there's reasons we all don't know. You may know, I don't, but why it ended. But for them to run 6 more years, 5 years, just keep showing it, it's wild to end a series like that that was apparently popular enough to succeed in replays for 6 years.
yeah. I actually, but I don't have any insight into that. In fact, you're talking about it like that. It makes me realize that it was more successful maybe than I ever thought because
Mhm.
I think in its first run it wasn't that successful, and I don't know why. I mean, yeah, much as I don't know why SilverHawks is a success, I don't know
Yeah.
why Pan wasn't, because I think it was a great show. Now,
Yeah.
we did have a lot of production problems, um, and Buzz. I don't think I'm talking out of school. I think this is right. I think that Buzz and Fox really got into it because whether it was Buzz's fault or just serendipity, bad serendipity, the production end of it did not go well. And they eventually brought in a guy called Lee Gunther, who will remain nameless in my memory, to straighten it out.
Okay.
Um, and Lee and I got into it a few times, but on the other hand, fairness to him, I worked on a show for him with that T-Rex, Wesley.
Yeah.
And so I don't know whether the production problems, the animation problem, I honestly don't know. I don't know what, but I will, go back to the essence of the show.
Mhm.
Matthew came up with an idea.
Oh, this is perfect. I actually did want to get to this because I remember you had we have talked about this off camera. This the idea of this episode. I definitely would like to talk about this more because it was such a fantastic concept and idea.
Cages of Pan, yeah.
Yeah. Is that's what you're? Was that what you're going to here or?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Yeah. I mean, so well, first of all, just go back very briefly to the original material. I mean, the original material is classic for me. In any kids stuff that I've written, I mean, books, I say it's for kids and the parents who read with.
Mhm.
Peter Pan is exactly that. You read it as an adult with or to your kids, and kids read it too. It is a story of imagination.
Yeah.
And if you lose your imagination, fundamentally, the whole world collapses.
Yeah.
So, Ages of Pan, Matthew came up. I don't remember, because we wrote it together in the end. And I don't remember who did what. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We wrote it as a two-parter, which is basically fundamentally an hour.
Yeah.
And I won't go into the theme, but there basically is a loss of belief. And as a result, the entire Neverland begins slowly to dissolve.
Mhm.
And Hook, from being the villain, really it becomes his passion to make sure that it doesn't dissolve, because if it dissolves, he's gone.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, we could have another, if we want to, another discussion about Ages of Pan in detail, but let's not do that right now. Shortly afterwards, Spielberg made the Robin Williams version. And I'm telling you, and anybody can write in and say you're an arrogant prick, and that's fine. Our story was so much better than that. So much better.
Right.
And that's one of the very sad things about kids animation. And take me out of it, take all the shows that I've ever been associated with out of it. There are ideas in there that are so wonderful and so much more advanced in terms of idea and originality than what we're seeing on the screen now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just wonderful interactions and wonderful, and there's a lot of crap out there as well. Of course there is. I understand that.
Oh yeah.
But it's just not a very respected area.
Mhm.
I mean, you can have shows like SpongeBob that are legendary. I understand that. But kids animation in general, I think, it's the second-rate writers, it's the second-rate this, it's the second-rate that. And that's just not true. I mean, I'm very rude about a lot of writers. I know that. But boy, I've worked with some real, real talent. And if it were given a chance, if it were given that opportunity, would produce wonderful material or could produce wonderful material, of course. And if it were squashed by a studio system. So you got the, two elements. And in reverse, because some of the shows I've worked on have attracted a lot of attention from people who want to turn them into movies,
Mhm.
you know, enter my office Joe Blow, who's $1 million screenwriter or a $5 million screenwriter now, and he's written one smash hit movie, or maybe two or three.
Right.
And they, without exception, and I have to preface this by saying I don't care. I have no chip. I've had a wonderful career, still have.
Mhm.
It's been great. I've been lucky. I've never written this $100 million movie, and that's fine.
Yet.
But I tell you that every single one of those people that's come into my office has been a prick.
No, really.
And I mean, they may have been very talented, or they may have been this, but their whole attitude is there's nothing you can tell me
Right.
about the show. I mean, maybe there's nothing I can tell them about writing. I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe there is, maybe there isn't. There's nothing you can tell me about this show. There's nothing you can tell me that will help me make it into a movie. It's me. I'm going to make it into the movie.
Right.
You just think, why are you even talking to me?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the point of the conversation then? Like, yeah, why are you here? Not you and I.
Yeah, and then when we talked about those Thundercats, and people were, well, we'll make a Thundercats movie. Okay, great. Or a reboot. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Why didn't you talk to the people who made the original?
Yeah.
You don't have to hire them.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Why didn't you at least talk to them? Well, is it insecurity? Is it arrogance? What is it?
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's, oh, well, we want to do our own thing, but that's fine. You can do your own thing, but still, you can, whether you learn something, just having the respect for, the what came before or whatnot. Like you said, you don't have to hire them. They don't have to be the showrunner. They don't have to be involved, but yeah, talk to them. It's
Yeah, well, and yeah, do your own, of course, I want to do my own thing, but what you're doing with your own thing is based on something else.
exactly, exactly.
So, a bit like taking, a great book, having take Grapes of Wrath and say, okay, this is a great book. It's about class and poverty. Throw the book out and write a movie about class and poverty.
Yeah,
Well, why did you buy Grapes of Wrath? Grapes of
yeah,
Wrath.
right,
So,
right.
if you want to write a movie uh, about Thundercats or about Peter Pan. You, why throw it out? Why throw the
Yeah,
I don't- so if you're if Warner Brothers or whoever that is has said to you, I'm going to pay you $150,000 just to go and talk to Peter Lawrence or Matthew Manning or you name them, other
yeah. Insert name here. Yeah,
you know, uh, well, but wouldn't the first thing you do is say, why do you think the show is a success?
mhm.
What are the elements that you think are important?
Yeah, right,
Um,
right.
no, I fully understand that you can throw all those out
Yeah,
after that conversation. And in fact, you may be right to do that. I mean, who knows? There are,
right.
no rules with creativity, with, well, there are no rules. Um, but, it, if you were going to build a car, well, I need to find out how an engine works.
Mhm.
Then I can put it in whatever car I want.
Yeah, right,
Or I can reinvent the engine,
right.
you know. Um, but you have to know that first, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, look, I'm pontificating about the whole business and that the business is so absurd that there are no rules. But if I were, well, I mean, I've been in that position, if I were asked to come in and take a look at a show and Johnny Quest is a classic example.
Yeah,
I think before you start fucking around with it, you have to know what it was.
Right, right.
So I don't know how we got sidetracked on that. But anyway, going to just to summarize about Peter Pan,
Yeah.
for me, it was a fantastic experience. I mean, it was a great crew. I met Takashi, who we haven't talked enough about him, who was like became like without being sentimental about it, like a brother to me. Um,
Now, there is something about Takashi that I actually read online. I want to see if this is accurate because I saw it. Yeah, again, we don't have to go into how it all went down or anything like that. But I had read that. Now, again, here's the internet. So please, maybe we can get a confirmation or whatnot. But apparently, was it Fox or the company wanted to um, they basically wanted to fire Takashi. They weren't interested in him being like working, doing what his part of the show. And then that's when you came in and you said, "Well, if you fire him, you might as well fire me because
yeah, no, that's not Peter Pan. That was Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest." Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I apologize.
and
I figured that was
that actually happened. And
okay. Well, no, I apologize. I mixed them up. I thought it was Peter
no, no,
Pan.
no, 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 no. I mean, that's exactly what I mean. That whole aspect of Johnny Quest is very interesting.
Mhm.
I made, and when we talk about Johnny Quest, I'll absolutely come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a couple of huge mistakes, which ultimately led with my leaving the show.
Okay. Well,
But I acknowledge those mistakes. I think other people behave like complete assholes, but that's
I
fine.
gotcha.
I mean, that's life. You have to deal with that. And
Yeah.
I was too angry and too arrogant and going through some bad shit in my own life.
Yeah.
I didn't sit back and say, okay, here's the solution to
Mhm.
this problem that Hanna-Barbera is having.
Okay. Well, I'll tell
Uh,
you what. Let's save that for. We'll do another episode with Johnny Quest about
yeah,
about your
yeah,
time with Johnny Quest. We'll
yeah.
get more into that. Yeah, that's my mistake. I know I was doing some research. I must have mixed the two up there. I'm sorry
Oh,
about that. But
no, that's fine. Um, so yeah, I mean, Peter Pan it was a wonderful experience for me. I can't. I'm sure there were bad things. Well, Bill Overgard died in the middle of it, which was wow, awful, terrible. Um, oh Christ, am I right about that? Yeah, it was Peter Pan. Yeah. Um, it was a great crew. I think we terrorized poor Buzz Potamkin, by building earthquake detectors in our office, nailing telephones into the. I nailed Chris's telephone and got Chris turned to his hubby's phone. So a lot of guys, we had phones. I nailed it into his desk and then left it ringing. I was, anyway, that was that. Ha ha ha! Very funny. Next day, I went into my office, fired up my computer, and it
yeah,
literally,
like literally.
well, it didn't explode in my face, but the back up and smoke everywhere. Chris, a friend who was a special effects guy, and put him in the back of smoke.
Jeez.
So,
Oh man.
but it was, we had a lot of fun. It was a good show, and
Right.
I want to go back very briefly to. Karen worked on it, Matthew worked on it, Takashi, obviously. I don't think anybody else from Rankin Bass worked on it, but if I missed you out, forgive me. Um, but I just go back to this that Sid, not the most popular guy in the world, and Margaret, infinitely popular, were fantastic to work with, and I wish to God that I could get Sydney on our show because he's a funny guy, he's erudite, he's articulate, and he's got a lot of information, a lot of information.
Well, again, hopefully, one day, maybe down the road, when his schedule opens up a bit and whatnot, hopefully we'll be able to get him because definitely sounds like he'd be a very interesting conversation to have and just hear
Yeah,
about him and everything that he's done.
yeah.
Hopefully, one day.
I think that, it's not just a matter of his schedule. I think. Look, I could be wrong. I don't want to talk for Sid, but
Yeah.
I think he fought long and hard and long and hard And I don't even know if he looks back on Peter Pan as a success, frankly. Um,
Okay.
I just think he's completely disillusioned.
Mhm.
And going back to how writers are treated and thought of in general, he wrote in a note to me recently um, that the writers were chattel,
Huh.
and I'm
Jeez.
sure that's not his view. I'm sure that's his view of how they were treated.
Okay. Right. Right.
So I just think he's very disillusioned with the whole thing, and
Mhm.
he's I don't know how old he is, but he's his career, as it were, is somewhat in the past. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he and Margaret made a shitload of money
Mhm.
for other people, and
Yeah.
I don't think they thought. I don't think they. Well, I know they didn't make much out of it. I know Sydney didn't.
Mhm.
I don't know about Margaret. I don't know enough about her, but it's a very. I was thinking about it this morning in another context. In fact, in the context of my accountant dying that I told you about,
Yeah.
it's like so many good people. I mean, good people were talented, nice, just good people.
Mhm.
Don't get there.
Yeah.
They don't want any luck. They don't, whatever it is. And so
Mhm.
many really nasty people, bad people, get there.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. You never know. That's the unfortunately like how and why it's. Oh well, I don't want to end things there on a negative note because see,
No, no,
you
no,
know,
no.
but because yeah, we are getting to about an hour. I mean, I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Is there
absolutely.
anything else about then Peter Pan and the Pirates that you want to get in? Any other other side stories or anything like that?
Uh, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, if something occurs to me, we could always bring it in later. I
Yeah.
just want to leave, I want to leave it on a really good note. It was a great show to work on. I
Mhm.
mean, Thundercats, what an experience. And now to have connected with all the, aficionados, incredible and humbling. And it's a connection that I don't have with anyone in Peter Pan.
Mhm.
Um, well, of course, I don't go to any of those conventions. So,
Yeah.
um, but Thundercats, it had some very, it had some bad moments. Not necessarily for me. I mean, at the end of it all, with it,
Mhm.
yeah. But as we've revealed, going through our this process, there was some not very nice things that happened on Thundercats. I don't remember anything like that on Peter Pan.
Mhm.
I mean, professionally, for me, it absolutely an incredible experience and never been repeated. Now, there were a lot of production problems, but that, nothing to do with, you know,
Yeah.
well, I say nothing to do with me. I'm not avoiding any blame. I just mean that it wasn't
Yeah.
my area.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Right.
and I had a couple of run-ins with, one or two of the production people. Um, but usually because usually on a basis of quality, some sort.
Mhm.
Mm, It was a great experience. And sadly, Buzz is gone, and very, very sadly for me, Takashi. I mean, that is Takashi and Bill Overgard was so inspirational and huge in my life,
Mhm.
and forever grateful. So, no, a good experience.
It's like it's very cool to hear a lot of these stories, and I know, like, while the fan base may not be as rabid as the Thundercats and SilverHawks fan bases
Um,
that are out there, there definitely is a fan base for Peter Pan and the Pirates that still absolutely love the show. Like I said, it really was a pillar of that of launching the Fox Kids network at the time, which is awesome. Like it's that in itself is such a cool thing to be a part of, and it really did well. Then to be on replays and reruns for years after, it meant a lot to a lot of people, and it was the right people. He got the target audience, and it kept doing well. So it's really great hearing about this, and hopefully we'll be getting some. If you're a Peter Pan and the Pirates fan, please send us some questions. Maybe we'll be able to do another episode later on about Peter Pan and the Pirates, answering more questions. I apologize to anybody watching that I'm not up to date on a lot, or not necessarily up to date, but I'm not an aficionado when it comes to Peter Pan and the Pirates. So maybe there are some questions out there I should have asked that I didn't know. So please let us know in the comments, send us emails, however you want to do it. Let us know what your questions are. We can ask them to Peter. And again, you never know. Maybe we'll get some other writers for Peter Pan and the Pirates. We'll see. We'll like ThunderCats, SilverHawks comic strip, where we are branching out and getting more people in 80s and 90s animation. Maybe we'll get some more who were involved in Peter Pan and the Pirates. Again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. This was just one avenue of Peter outside the Rankin Bass world. So we have many other areas we can touch on later on. Like you said, there's Johnny Quest was the show you worked on, and we've talked about doing an episode on that. So get your questions ready for that. There's also, I forget the exact name, but the T-Rex show. And that wasn't the name, but I apologize that you mentioned that. So again, we are going to be doing some more things. So keep your eyes on our social medias that are all across the board, and obviously on the YouTube. And again, let us know what you want to hear about from Peter's career as far as writing and even behind the scenes and whatnot. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. And I'm not gonna end it with the normal, because this one wasn't really a ThunderCats related episode.
ThunderCats told you Peter Pan. Oh,
yeah. I mean, what was the Peter Pan have a catchphrase? I don't know. If I'm trying to think, would maybe the Captain Hook have one? Or here you go. Now, if you don't have anything ready to go, what was there a good pirate lingo term I can end things with here, like in that language?
oh my gosh! I wish you hadn't asked me that. Well, okay, yeah, Slum Gullions. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. How about that?
There you
Slum
go.
Gullions.
That's
All right.
perfect. We're going to end it with that, everybody, and be sure to tune in next time. And yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun next time. See you then.
Okay. Bye bye.